Wow, big tangent. What's it like knitting as a guy?
Hello and welcome to season 2 of my podcast and episode 9. We're back with this new season. I've got 9 new amazing guests. This whole next season was recorded back in kind of January and February. This week on the episode, I have Jon from the Suffolk Fibre. Jon is a really, really nice guy. We got chatting over Instagram. Jon is a hand dyer. He creates some wonderful wool, and you can go and check him out at the Suffolk Fibre. What have we been up to? Haven't been up to tons since the last season. Starting to come out of lockdown now, which is quite nice, and I'm starting to come back to work, which is really nice as well, getting back into the kitchen and back into the cafe. In this conversation we talk a little bit about the dyeing process, a bit how Jon's doing, and his kind of like hopes for his new business that he's starting. I'll be back at the middle with a little update from Jon, because it's been a while since we spoke to him, and I will be back right at the end with just a little bit more chat. We start the conversation with me asking Jon how he's doing.
Yeah, really good. It's like, I think it just is what you make of it, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Just doing the thing. Really good because I've taken today off to do this, but then also I've got I've got a business thing, my own business thing this evening, and it's been one of those moments where I'm like, one day off is really not sufficient for what I need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Yeah, we went for a walk and it's very icy, and I did manage to fall over, so that was fun.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I knew it was coming as well, and the dog just pulled a little bit too hard, and we was like down a bit of a slope and managed to go. Done really well. Like the past few days when it's been really snowy, neither of us have fallen, but did today. Yeah.
I slept in, like, ice petrifies me, and so I'm in Glasgow, and things can become icy at like the drop of a hat. And there's one in my neighborhood. I live in a particular neighborhood, and everything that I need to go to, like the shops and like Boots and kind of all the supermarkets and things, no matter what way I go, I need to go through this one particular street, and I don't understand what it is about this one street, but it exists in a universe where grit wasn't invented, and and nobody thinks to do it themselves on the street. And of course, it's like several streets away. So I think the solution is, well, why don't you just go and do it? And I'm like, no, that's like 3 neighborhoods away. I'm not taking grit 3 neighborhoods and just putting it all across this because those people won't do it. I don't know how people live on that street.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happens. It was awful. Like, I hate it. There was one particular evening. It's a street, honestly, it takes less than 30 seconds to walk along it. It's that short.
Mm-hmm.
There was one evening, I was on the phone to a friend at the time, and it genuinely took me about 25 minutes to get up this street because it's barely an incline. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not flat. It's like, it's just got that tiny little bit of something. And that's all it takes. And that's all it took, I think 2 weeks ago. Feet just, it was total like cartoon animation, ridiculous, like feet flew from under me. I basically saw them in front of my face, crashed, and then I slid, and the street just took me on a journey. I just kept sliding. I was like, and whenever that starts happening, you're just like, I just need to let this happen.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, take me away.
That's quite funny.
But I hate it. Ice is terrifying. Like, it's the worst. So I'm really sorry that you found.
Yeah, we're happy with the snow. The snow's really fun. The dog loves the snow, but the ice is just, we're at that stage now where it's kind of like been compacted and it's now like really, really slippy. So yeah. How did you get into dyeing yarn?
Into dyeing yarn. It's something that I've actually been thinking about for a lot longer than when I started. So I started October of 2020, so October of last year. I think I was mentally prepared to start it actually in October of 2019, but I'm that kind of person that would need to fully visualize it and exactly what all of the beats would be before I would even start it. Like, I think the way that I think it might be an anxiety thing, but I think it's the case that if there's a missing piece, if there's a piece that I've not worked out yet, I think in my mind it's very much like a circuit. It needs to be complete before it, like, this stuff can start going. So actually, I think it was something that's been in the works for a long time, which has meant that it's just been in the back of my head for I think over a year at that point. I'd kind of already put a business plan together in October of 2019, and I think I was very much at the point where I could have done a professional qualification in October 2019, or I could have done the die-in, and really struggled over it, and eventually made the decision to go for the professional qualification to do with my job. And then everything happened in March, and the industry completely changed, and my opinion of what I would do with that qualification would change. So I wanted to get into mortgages. And I was then faced with the idea of being in a meeting room with customers, and they generally tend to be quite small. And of course, it's members of the public coming in, and wow, absolutely not. No, thank you for me right now. Thanks. And so, there was a couple of months of like really struggling over kind of, have I failed because I've decided not to do that anymore? Like, I enrolled in it, and now all of a sudden I'm kind of having to question whether or not it's viable for me at all. And then I got paid. I got paid for my day job in October, and I just went, you know what? It's been long enough now. I've been thinking about it for long enough. I just need to go. And literally within the space of that morning, ordered everything I needed. And I'd happened to have the following 2 days off work anyway. It all arrived, and I started to Stop It Fibre.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's really cool that you just kind of had this idea. And what were you doing before then, if you don't mind me asking?
So Dystopia Fibre is very much the kind of the hobby, the side project, the passion thing that I'm working on. My day job, I work in financial services, so I work in banking, and I've been really fortunate enough to have transitioned into working from home. So that's really helped with the business as well, just in terms of the amount of time that I've had. Like, that would have taken like an hour and a half out of my morning, and then an hour and a half out of my evening just to get to work and go home. Like, that's collectively, and it's probably even more than that in terms of the mental space that you need to change gears from your job into what you're going to do at home, like when I worked in the office, I had a hard enough time coming home and making dinner, never mind starting and curating a business, Mm-hmm. So yeah, financial services in the day, and all of this in the evening. But now I'm thinking about the business all the time.
That's really cool. So are you hoping at some point you'll be able to like just fully put all your energy into this?
Yeah. That would really be the dream. Absolutely the dream. And I think with how supportive people have been with it over the past couple of months, like, I've just been blown away. Like I say, it's been something that I've really kind of anxiously analysed and thought about before I started, and a lot of that, the unpredictable value in that was the people and the community. But what attracted me to it in the first place was the community aspect of it. Like, I went to a couple of yarn festivals, and I noticed that, well, I knew that I was a knitter and I was part of this massive community of knitters, and it's great because you've got immediately something in common that you can talk about whenever I meet another crafter, another knitter, someone that does something with fibre in particular. immediately you have several questions like, what have you worked on? What do you like working with? What's, what bases of yarn, what colors of yarn, and so on. But I noticed that there was kind of a parallel thing happening with the dyers and all of the kind of supply like vendors at the festivals. I noticed that they all had their own thing that was kind of running parallel, and I really enjoyed the atmosphere. Perth Yarn Festival in particular was one that everybody just seemed to be having such a great time, and I think it was at that point, because that was September 2019, so this kind of ties in with, okay, in October 2019, that's when I started to think about it. And yeah, like I say, then a year passed and so much happened in that year, as we all know. And at that point then, I'm just blown away with how welcoming people have been. It's been really wonderful to have been welcomed in, and I've had so many amazing conversations with other dyers and suppliers in the industry, and that was my unpredictable value. That was my kind of, I don't know how people are going to react to what I'm going to put out, and like you get that total imposter syndrome. What if people hate it? What if people, what if people really don't resonate with it? And it's not been that experience at all. It's been like it's blown me away, and so absolutely it is the dream. I would love to do it. I would love to be fortunate enough to be able to do that for myself. So yeah, we'll see.
That's really cool. I mean, this has definitely been a common theme of the podcast, is the community aspect of this. The kind of fiber community is so welcoming, so supportive. If you have any questions or need any help, there's loads of people out there who don't really want anything else in return. They just want to be helpful and help out. So hopefully we won't get too much of the dog in the background. She's running around upstairs. Yeah, like the community is wonderful. When I see new people starting out their new projects or their new knitting Instagram, I always try and welcome them to the community. And I know that there's a lot of other people that try and do the same as well. And yeah, it's really cool that, I mean, how did you get into knitting?
As soon as you mentioned the community around kind of how welcoming people have been, I think that's been an integral part of how knitting stuck. I think I had a really long period before starting knitting where I didn't have a hobby. Like I struggled with what to do in my spare time, and depression really set in as a result of that. Like it's really difficult not to have something to occupy what you do in your downtime. It got to the point where really I could have said my hobby was sleeping. I would come home from work and I would just go to bed, and that would fill the rest of my spare time, and I would get up and I would go to work again. I think it was January 2019 that the new year had just come in, and it wasn't kind of a like hashtag New Year, New Me kind of thing, but I think we must have been in like week 2 or 3 of January of 2019, and truthfully, I don't know what it was that had it come into my mind, but I have a local yarn shop, the Yarn Cake, and I went in and I bought. I went in and I asked, I want to start knitting. I've never knit before. What do I need? And I was given some straight needles and I think some DK weight or Aran weight yarn. And the advice was, try with that first, and if you like that, then come back and we can talk about more. And they also mentioned that they had a knit night. So they had a knit night on Thursday nights, and I think it was that was the thing that really meant that this hobby stuck, because it wasn't just a physical thing to do with my hands. It immediately became a social thing, and that wasn't my intention at all. I didn't start knitting with the idea of meeting people, and then there's the kind of the stereotype of, the idea that a knit night would be full of kind of golden oldies and they're all knitting kind of garter stitch scarves. I went to this knit night the once, and I genuinely would say my life changed. The range of people, the conversations that were happening, like all the different jobs that they did, it meant that immediately there was conversation. But there was also a lot of history there because people had been going for a long time. So of course, all these people knew each other, and I'm then new to that group. And it was absolutely that welcoming atmosphere that meant that not only was I welcomed into the craft, but I was welcomed into a new friend group, and they're so precious to me.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I know that I've knitted on my breaks and stuff when I was working in a cafe before lockdown and stuff, and the number of people, like, it was quite hard to actually get anything done because the number of people that would come up to me and try and just strike up a conversation of, like, not just generally, like, there was a lot of like the older generation that were like coming up and saying, "Oh, that's really cool that you're knitting," and but there was a lot of younger people as well who were interested into finding out or saying that their nan or something taught them how to knit and they haven't done it, and I like to think that some of those people actually went home and thought about it at least. How do you find it being a guy? Do you have like extra people? Do you have comments as well of like, "Oh, you're a guy who knits"? Because I get that quite often. But I feel like there's our generation, at least us, there's more of a range of different types of people and guys and girls, and everyone is like, yeah. How do you find it?
Yeah, how do I find it? Very much that, a lot of that of what you've described. Well, my experience of knitting on my breaks, I imagine, has been very different from your experience of knitting in your breaks. So, pre-March 2020, I worked in an office in the financial industry. So, a guy knitting in the break room was a total pariah. Like, weird looks. People didn't understand it. What you doing? And then actually, I was told not to. So it was the case that there was a problem with it, and they would prefer that I didn't. What was it like? So that was what it was like in the office, and then in cafes and things where I would spend a lot of my time knitting. So once I started knitting, it got to the point where I wasn't just going home and going to bed and sleeping until I got up to work the next day. I would finish work and I would go to one of my favorite cafes, and I would sit and knit. And I liked that. It wasn't so much that I was doing it to be seen, but I liked that people were wanting to talk to me as a result. And there were people, like strangers that I've never spoken to before, that would approach me and go, "What are you working on? What are you doing?" The big question is always, "Are you doing, like, is this for sale? Is this for sale? I want it." And I think that's a conversation that's happening a lot at the minute with Bernie's Mittens. Bernie's Mittens happened, and everybody has then went, "Okay, well, I want those." And that was a big question that I got a lot. Like, I remember I was knitting a particular shawl at the time, and this lady came up to me and was like, I want that. Can I buy that off you?" And no, like, it's mine. Thank you. Like, I thank you so much that you've seen it and you want it. But it is like, the knitting is my special thing, like my hobby. If you want to learn, like, I will have a seat and I'll teach you, and you can make your own. Wow, big tangent. What's it like knitting as a guy?
No, that's cool. I do kind of want to talk a bit about how your work decided that it wasn't okay. Was this like complaints or something? Like, what happened there? It is what it is. I've accepted. I've accepted that no, it's not for everyone. And I think in a work environment, and I think certainly in particular contexts, certainly not kind of at my desk. It was the case that sometimes we had downtime and sometimes things weren't as busy. And I think it was the case that some colleagues didn't enjoy the idea that
others had time to do something else. So it's, I think it's just an aspect of
people not quite understanding.
It's just an aspect of corporate life, really.
Yeah, I guess so. But I feel like if you're on your break in a break room, that shouldn't be an issue. But
yeah, I think I wanted to do it had consumed me, so I wanted to do it all the time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I kind of wanted, but we had a coffee van for my work for a little bit, because that's how my the place I work started, with a little van, and I kind of wanted to fill some of those extra times with knitting, but wasn't able to. But like, for the reason, it's like food hygiene reasons, really. Like, you can't really have wool and stuff around food, which I was totally fine with. But there's moments when it's really quiet. I'm like, I could get half of the hat done here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll know yourself, it's the thing that you know how easy it is just to pick it up and put it down. And it's got to the point now where I know that I could pick it up and still do my work at the same time. Like, it's actually not, it's not a thing that's going to take my concentration away from what I'm doing. Actually, this is probably what's going to have me sit here and weather out the thing that I'm working on. You know what I mean?
It can help you focus a little bit and like just stop you thinking, or like overthinking. Like, I can't remember who I spoke to, but I spoke to someone recently who said the same thing, as like, if anything, it's able to help them focus a little bit better on what they're actually doing. Like, once you get into knitting as well, like, you can just kind of do it, unless you're like really having to count stitches for shaping something. If you're just like knitting in the round or just knitting a scarf or a hat or something, I don't know, I find it easier to focus on other things. Like, I will knit a little bit while I'm editing some of these videos.
It can just, and I think personally it's a massive aid in terms of concentration, in terms of focus, overall happiness. And ultimately for me, it just means that I've got something to show for my time. Like, I know that I've got into dyeing at this point, and that's a completely different kind of set of processes. But like, I have this. Can I show you a project?
Yeah.
This was my lockdown. So like the first, like, where I think I cast it on. There was a bit of time that passed after the first kind of thing happened, and I think I cast it on like April, May time, and this was 3 weeks of like solid knitting. Was this?
Wow.
And so this is my kind of sea swell shawl, by Stephen West. And so it was just like, I'm not going to get it all in, but you can see like it is huge. I'll put it on, and it kind of, this just characterizes my time. Like, I don't look back on last March fondly, but it's the case that, okay, I've sat down and I've done a thing, I've sat down, and while I might not be able to contribute to the global situation, at least what I can do is keep going for right now, and I think that's what this is kind of typified, was being able just to keep going.
It's just trying to find a way of getting through the day at the moment. Like, we will get through this. It is going to be hard. And there's people who are unfortunately losing people because of this horrible virus, but all we can do is trying to keep ourselves sane, and like, that looks amazing. But let's talk a little bit about the process of dyeing, because I mean, the color choices you've got are really nice. Like, you've got a really nice range of colors. So where did the kind of dyeing, like, what's your color palette like that you prefer and stuff?
Yeah, so I think currently what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work through to get a range of colors currently. So I have just started. I do want to have an appeal for a lot of people. I would like people that like really dark and kind of more moody and muted colors to be able to see what I've got and find something. But I also want to kind of have that opposite side of, I want to get into really quite nice washed out, kind of more kind of lighter speckles, pastels, kind of greys and whites and all of that. So I'm currently in a phase of growth creatively and in terms of the vision. And so I'm trying to work through some concepts. So I think I take a lot of inspiration from narratives. So I think dystopic fiber, kind of a name of its time, I think quite an archaic use of the word dystopia. But I think I'm going to try and take inspiration from kind of science fiction narratives, a lot of kind of post-apocalyptic stuff, but then also just try and bring in kind of what's happening to me at the time. So my first kind of, I'm calling it my second big update, but like my kind of first update with a purpose, with a vision behind it, just took a lot of inspiration from the fact that I was fortunate enough to be able to spend Christmas with a friend. Normally I would have went home for Christmas, but I couldn't have this year. And so I ended up staying with her, and she lives next to the beach, and we ended up spending Christmas Day having a big walk on the beach. And that's where a lot of these colorways have came from. I've got some I could show you if you want to, if you want to see. But as we walked on the beach, there was so much sea glass. Like, I actually don't think I've noticed sea glass on a beach before. I don't know if it's something that I wasn't looking for, or do we not have sea glass in Northern Ireland? I don't know. But wow, that was a really silly thing to say. But sea glass on the beach is kind of what I wanted to create. So it's to kind of break it down. There's a bit of a beigey, sandy coloured base to it. You can kind of see it happening there. But then over the top, I've kind of put a really light speckling of this really nice kind of what would be a bottle green, but because I've kind of tried to keep it really kind of wet and watery in the dye pan, it's kind of dissipated a lot, and it's kind of spread out amongst the skein. But then I wanted to try and put a bit of a palette together, so I've tried to get several different tones of it. So I've made the brown a little bit more prominent as it's gone on. Those tones are a bit deeper, but then the green follows in with that as well. So that was my first idea of what I wanted to put across if I was going to do a shop update with that in mind. And then I moved on to some other things that were on the beach at the time. There were really gorgeous shells, like blue shells, mussel shells. And I created this off the back of it. So once again, I just wanted to take everything that was in those shells and try and put it in. So there's some brown tones in it, some brown speckles, but then I went into kind of like a periwinkle blue purple, as well as then those lighter bits of blue. And then I'm finding that I love a speckle. I'm a sucker for a speckle. So I've put a little bit of speckling in, kind of with the browns and with the blues, and that's kind of where I got that. And then it just so happened that I'd already had a colorway that went with the vibe of it, freshwater, which is what I kind of restocked. Well, I'm going to restock for this update. It happens in a couple of days, and that's actually what this is knit out of. So this is my own hand dyed yarn that I'm wearing, which was really gratifying to kind of have a finished object that. Sorry, I ramble, don't I? I keep talking.
No, honestly, fine. Like, it's really fascinating. Like, and your jumper looks awesome. Like, and I guessed it was some of your own yarn from looking at the images of the coloration that you've done. And it looks great. Did you work from the top down, or? Yeah,
so a lot of knitters will know if I say the love note pattern. That's what this is. This is a love note. The love note is characterised by a lovely lace panel, a lace section just here. So it's a top down. There's a good bit of lace that people find really engaging, and then really it's just such a simple jumper to put together by Tin Can Knits. That's the love note. I personally didn't feel like the lace would have suited the things that I like to wear. So I just cut it out, and it was a small modification. All it meant was I continued to follow the pattern. I just didn't do the lacy bits. Counted the rows out, knew how many rows were going to happen, and so long as all the increases happened and all of the knitting evens out. So this is the second love note I've knit, actually, but it's the first one that I've done in my own yarn, and it won't be the last. It's a great pattern.
That's really cool. It's something that I am determined to try and do this year, is trying to do a knit kind of down, because I either do it in panels or I've tried doing it from the bottom up, because I just kind of want to experiment a little bit more. And I've typically, when I started knitting, I was way more into like thicker yarns, but I'm definitely starting to work and kind of want to try thinner yarns now, just because I kind of want a project to last a little bit longer. Before, I kind of wanted them to I wanted to see results really quickly. But yeah, now I feel like I kind of would like to spend a little bit more time on a project to make it last a little bit more. And I think one of the ways is using thinner wool, because I'm definitely getting quicker with my knitting as well. So
absolutely. One way that I take yarn sometimes and put them together in a way that might help them last longer. Sometimes I hold things double. So, for example, if you've got 2 fingering weight yarns, which are quite a fine yarn, and there would be a lot of work in finishing a project in a fingering weight yarn, depending on what it was. I happened to have a 4-ply fingering weight yarn, and I had a singles base of a fingering weight yarn. Singles terrifies me, like because it's not plied. There is that opportunity for it to begin to unravel and come apart. You can also just pull on a single strand, and with enough force it will come apart. So, to be fair, you could do that for a 4-ply as well. But actually, what I did was I held a singles double with a 4-ply fingering weight, and I made this hat. So it's the Oslo hat, because it's 2 4-plies held together, 2 fingering weights held together. It knits up quicker as well. So you kind of there's a lot of benefits to holding it double. I'm not as anxious about the singles falling apart, and it was a lot quicker to knit up. I think I did this in like, it was about 2 weeks, but I didn't knit on it constantly. Contrast to that, there's this hat that I've knit, which is just in a fingering on its own. You can see already with the kind of ripples in the fabric that it is a lot kind of drapier. It's a lot more it's a lot more floppy. Like this, I can, if I want to
hold its shape a little bit more.
I could stand it up on my own and be an absolute gnome. But because of the nature of that, because I'm holding 2 things together, it's giving it a lot more structure. Whereas if I take that off and I put this on, I've decided that oh look, it's going to make me to be an absolute fool. Look, that's standing up as well. Disregard everything that I've just said. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it made sense in my head. I've made a fool of myself. Thank you for your time. I will see you.
Let's talk a little bit about the dyeing process. Like, how many batches do you do of a wool at a time, and like, what's the process?
Yeah, so currently, what I'm finding is I don't know how other people dye. I can't be with them in person, and while I do ask other dyers a lot of questions about their process, actually I've not touched on that specifically, because I know that I can at least get the results. So I'm currently dyeing between 2 and 3 skeins at a time. But then that doesn't then mean that it's 2 and 3 skeins like in a session. It would be the case that I would dye 2 or 3 and then another 2 or 3 and then another 2 or 3. I only have one hot plate and one pan, so it is very humble beginnings. The hope would be to have several on the go. But I also find that a lot of my technique involves a lot of dipping, so it involves a lot of like they actually have to be in my hands, and I'm dipping them in and applying all of this stuff. So I know that a lot of other dyers they do lay all of the skeins out in their pans, so it means that they can have like 10 pans on the go, put all the yarn in and have it all kind of sitting ready to go, and then they just apply the stuff on the top. I think that's probably where my processes are going to have to develop and become a bit more scalable, because currently I'm sanding over one dye pan, kind of dipping it in and over again. So I only have 2 hands. I would love to have 10, but I think I'm going to need to adjust in other ways. So.
I mean, hopefully one day you'll be able to scale up when the demand comes more and more. So yeah, what kind of dyes are you using? Are you using, because I mean, you've got some really bright colors, so I can't imagine they're all natural, or are they kind of natural?
I've not used any natural dyes yet. It was something that I was interested in before I started, and it is something that I would like to get into, specifically avocados. I love the color that people can get from avocado, and I also acknowledge that there's a lot of skill in that. I think it's a labor of love, and it's something that technically I think you need to know how to get right. So I've not personally done natural dyes yet. I'm currently using acid dyes, so it would be citric acid and acid reactive dyes, so kind of the powdered stuff that you can apply as a powder, or you can apply having mixed it up into solutions so that it's ready to go.
That's cool. I mean, I am very interested in some of the colors, because like I said, I would love to knit a jumper a bit like what you've got at the moment. I hope you're all enjoying the podcast so far. Here's John with a little update of what he's been doing since we recorded that episode.
Hi Tom, it's John. I just thought I'd get in touch since it's been a little while since we had our last conversation. A couple of months have passed, and I just wanted to just give you a quick update in terms of what I've been up to. I'm wearing my latest finished object. This is the pink velvet sweater by Andrea Maury, and I've knit it in some of my own yarn, and so these are available in my shop, and it's got some lovely colour work, and it's got some lovely mohair there, so you can see the kind of fluff, the kind of halo that it's got. I'm really pleased with it. It's a project that I've been working on for the last month or two. I've had the opportunity now to vend at several festivals, so Yarncraft Virtual Festival and Indie Untangled's first virtual, they call it Across the Pond, and so that's been really good. It's been a great opportunity to reach some new people, certainly reach people in America, specifically with Indie Untangled, which was really good. I'm really excited to vend at Yorkshire Yarn Fest. I think as this goes up, I'll be vending at Yorkshire Yarn Fest tomorrow, and that's also on Instagram. I'll be launching a new collection based on the Wizard of Oz. I thought it would be really nice to have some brighter colours for the spring and summer months, based on a really fun kind of franchise and film. So I'm really excited to launch that. Thank you so much again for having a chat with me. I hope all's well with you, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. Bye bye.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and share it with other people as well. We joined the conversation with me asking John what his favourite project has been.
It's probably this. So this is another Stephen West pattern. He calls it his parallelogram, because it's a parallelogram and chic and well done, Stephen. But I like to say sometimes whenever I get a project in mind that I have a vision for it, and the vision that I had for this was kind of certainly back in kind of 90s pre-90s TV, live TV, if something went wrong, they would have that kind of technical difficulties card that would come up with the kind of 6 kind of really bright kind of neon tones and then some blacks and whites, and it's kind of like the test card. I wanted to use this pattern and recreate that, and so this was before I was dyeing yarn, and scoured the internet for all sorts of neon colors, and then I had a couple of different blacks and whites, and then, well, I'll just show you. So I've split it into 2 halves. You're supposed to just use 7 colors the whole way round, but I split the shawl up into 2 halves so that I could get a really high contrast. So the first half it looks like this,
Nice.
and this is the kind of darker side of it. I finished it with a stripy I-cord bind off as well.
Oh wow!
I certainly on, we would call it UTV in Northern Ireland, but on like ITV Channel 3, they used to have like the little flickies that would happen right before the adverts at the top. But is that a thing in England? I don't know. But it's like my reminder of, okay, an advert's about to come. It's like a total TV nerdy. But this is the one half, and then the other half is where all the neons happened. So that's where the other half has happened. So that's that, and then all together you kind of get that real split down the middle in between. I would say this is my favorite project. It's the project that I spent the most time planning. I think it's the biggest shawl I've ever done, and to put it on, it means that you're getting both of those at this, like both sides of it at the same time, and it means that I can excuse me, it means that I can present all of the grey bits on a day if I'm feeling like I want to have all the grey come out. But then it also means that I can like flip it out and I can have all of the kind of neons happen all the time as well. So, and then you've got the kind of I love the stripy I-cord.
That's so cool.
The problem that I have with projects when I'm making them is my favourite aspects of them are always the bits that I have to do at the very end. And of course the I-cord bind off is the last bit. It was agony to get to this point because I think my vision really relied on the stripies working. So to have to put so much work into something before you actually get to the part that you think is going to be the best bit, not knowing that if it's going to work or not. I think it did. I'm so pleased with it. So favorite project, ta-da.
It looks amazing. And like after you saying that it's like the test card thing, yeah, I get it completely. Yeah.
That's it was my baby for a long time, and then I finally burned it off, and it was one of those moments where you were just like, I never want to stripe anything ever again. Because I think it ended up being like 1,500 stitches of I-cord bind off.
Wow.
It was a lot. But before that, actually, my really precious project was the sea swell. I think I find, and I wonder if you might feel similarly, the projects that I do, I really get a really distinct memory of what I was doing in and around that time whenever I was knitting it. So I'll wear a project, or I'll think of a particular project that I finished, and actually it'll be the memories of what's happened in and around that time in my life that come to me about it. And I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, occasionally there'll be a project that I've been working on I do have strong memory ties with. I mean, like my hats, for example, that I started doing, I have kind of now fond memories of trying to knit as many as I can for markets that, like for my first actual market that I did, which was really fun. And then I have like the first hats that I designed, which were really fun to do as well, that just bring me back when I was starting to knit.
Yeah. What's your experience of vending in markets been? Is that something that you've been able to do kind of pre-COVID in person, or has it been kind of after all of that?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, I was able to do 2 Christmas markets at a museum and gallery local to us. And that was really fun. I mean, I've worked in hospitality for all my working life, so I quite like talking, engaging with people. The first time I did it, pretty much every stand that was around me were just sitting down and a bit quiet and a bit shy. And the other side of the hall, there was a lot of people who were a bit more like me, who were a bit more outgoing. So it was kind of nice that, in a way, that the people walking past my stall were getting bombarded with everyone else trying to like talk to them. It was just me on this side. But yeah, I sold quite well during that one. And then this kind of last Christmas, I was meant to do a Christmas market, which ended up being an online market, which didn't work for me at all, unfortunately. But hopefully next year I'll be able to do more markets again.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's the community element and just talking to people about it. And it's not necessarily like I'm not doing my knitting and stuff as like a main income or anything. It's just a hobby. If I can sell some bits to help fund the hobby, that's like a little bonus for me, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being such a new business, I've not had that experience yet at all. So I think you've just been so fortunate to have actually met people in person. Just because I've not had that chance yet. That'll come. It absolutely will.
That's a good segue into when we're recording this in January, near the end of January. Yeah, near the end of January. But when this comes out, you will be doing a market.
Yeah,
a festival. Is it a festival?
A festival, yeah, Yarn Festival. It will be online, so it's not in person. But I've just had it confirmed that I've been accepted into Yorkshire Yarn Fest for April, which has been whenever I kind of drew out plans for this year, for 2021. Vending at the festival, whether in person or online, was going to be a massive part of that. There are so many dyers that I absolutely adore and respect in terms of the work that they've put out and the communities that they've built themselves, and to be included in a festival alongside some of these amazing people will be just I'm so pleased. I'm pleased and I'm relieved as well, because I think it's really validating that I can be put alongside these people, kind of being such a new business. Although not so new, I suppose, in April. I'll have been around for a couple more months at that point. I'll be old and wizened. No, absolutely not. But I'm excited. I can't wait. I have so many big ideas for it. It's the case that this is only my second shop update that I'm preparing just now, and by then I'll maybe have 4, 5, 6 under my belt, and at that point I think I'll have got the range. I'll have developed the full range of colors for those people, like I mentioned, that like the light ones or the dark ones. At that point, I think I'm going to try and really put a concept across. So kind of with that kind of what I call my technical difficulty shawl, there was a real idea behind that. I think I want to bring that in to what I'm dyeing as well as what I'm knitting. So yeah, I can't wait. And it's going to be so good.
Amazing. So. Well, I mean, I'll be trying to check you out online, and I wish you all the best for the festival. And I can't wait to see your company grow, and I'm hoping at some point you'll be able to have this as your full-time income, and hopefully it'll make you nice and happy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And what about you with the content that you're putting out on YouTube? What I've really resonated with is it's a really chill vibe that you're putting across, and that's what I really enjoyed, and that's why I asked to speak with you in the first place, was because I really enjoyed the kind of production value to it. Do you have a particular vision or a plan to what you're doing on YouTube or Instagram?
Thank you. I don't really have a vision. I just figured, I love filming and editing. I grew up around the kind of music industry. My dad has been in bands all my life, and I studied music tech at college and university. So I quite like producing stuff, and I've kind of always been into like a little bit of photography, a little bit of like videography, but I've never really studied like film and stuff like that. But just during lockdown, I just figured, why not try and vlog a little bit? I mean, editing takes a long time. For like this podcast episode, average is about 2 to 3 days of editing. I mean, that's in between of like looking after the dog, making lunch and dinners and stuff like that. But I mean, but at the same time, I love working in catering, and I love making coffee. I love making food. So I'm just trying to really enjoy this time that I've got to work on different hobbies and make content for people at the moment. Yeah. I think my main aim is just to help inspire people. If that's inspire someone to make a better cup of coffee at home, or to try knitting, or I'm working on a YouTube series with the Herbert Art Gallery called Historic Cooking. Yeah, I mean, my whole aim is just try and help inspire people to try something out.
Yeah, oh, totally. And I think it really comes across, like, even just with you know, we're recording this a lot earlier than when it's coming out, so much more content will be available at this point. I think a whole season before me. So you know, even just with the stuff that you've put out already, I that's what I was attracted to. So it's clearly, you know, it's clearly working.
Thank you.
That's really cool. And it's just a shame that I think we're inhibited in the way that we are at the minute. But although I think we are working with what we have, and we're making the most of the opportunity that we have at this moment with all of the time that we have. So I think to be grateful for that, I suppose, is a big thing. Sure. I think I would have no idea what I would be doing at this point. I think it's really difficult to visualize what would have happened, but I suppose I don't really think that's healthy at this point either.
I think, for example, like if I did have the idea of doing the podcast and I did have a bit of time, if like lockdown and stuff wasn't happening, I probably would have been able to maybe go as far as London, because the commute to London isn't too bad from Coventry. But if it wasn't the fact that like Zoom is like a massive thing, and we're all kind of like stuck in this kind of limbo, I wouldn't have been able to talk to you. I wouldn't have been able to talk to a few people from Canada. I've got people in America that I'm like in line to talk to, and if I can work out the time difference, there's people in Australia and stuff. It's been able to give me the chance to do this podcast and talk to amazing people like yourself, but give me the chance to talk to a whole range of people that I would never have had the opportunity to actually talk to virtual face-to-face.
Absolutely. And that's absolutely the experience that I've had, is that if you've ever thought about sending someone a message, do it now. Everybody at this moment in time has more time available for other people, kind of no matter what. Everybody's schedules have changed. Everything is unpredictable at the moment, and it's the case that I feel exactly the same. I've messaged people that otherwise I wouldn't have, and it's exactly the same. It's not just been people that have been based in the UK. I've spoken to people also in Canada and America and Australia, and that I know for a fact that wouldn't have happened if we weren't in the situation that we were in. And I think in terms of overall receptiveness, I think it's the case that it's really just opened up that possibility of communication in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise, and with people that we wouldn't have otherwise. And so I think it's a real, like, I'm sometimes I feel conflicted about saying that, you know, there's been benefits to it, because it really doesn't take away from the gravity of the severity that's happened. And so I think there's a real kind of survivor's guilt that people talk about sometimes whenever they go through like a real traumatic experience, which I think is what we're all going through. But in terms of something I'm really grateful for, it's been that communication channel that's opened, that people have just taken it and ran with it and went, okay, I'm in this boat. So many other people are in this boat of the people that we would have been doing business with maybe aren't available anymore, or those venues aren't available. Let's just see what other platforms are available. And that's what we're using right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think the world is ever really going to be back to where it was, but I'm hoping that all of us, we can kind of shape the world to a bit more how we want it to be. Because I think we were all kind of just going with the flow, and that was how the world worked. And I think this has been a global change, and I'm hoping that like more people will be able to work a little bit more from home and be able to spend more time with their family. And I mean, I think we're all going to appreciate actually being able to see family again, and loved ones and friends and everyone really. So I think I'm hoping that we can kind of shape the world in the future a bit more how we want it to be, and not how it has been in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. People talk about going back to normal, like I'm gonna go and do this when we're back to normal, or I'm gonna go and when we're back to normal, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna achieve all of those things. I think a more productive perspective that I'm trying to take is actually let's learn from the experience that we've had, and rather than going back to normal, let's continue to move forward. You know, why go back? That's backwards.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much to Jon for talking to me. If you would like to see more about Jon and his Instagram, go and check him out at Dystopic Fiber on Instagram. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, or follow me wherever you're kind of watching this from. It really helps. And also please share it as well, because the idea of the podcast is to try and help more people feel creative and try a new hobby. Now that we're coming out of lockdown, we kind of still need to work on our mental health, because it is still hard out there. So please share. I'll be back next Friday with another episode. Thank you all again for watching or listening to this, and I hope you have a great week.